guys, so you will never believe what I just did. This is the second time I've done this video lesson. The first time I recorded the whole thing, got done, was checking it out to make sure you guys could see it okay, and realized because it's raining outside today and it's darker than normal when I record these videos, the TV screen just looked like a bright light. Just a giant bright light. You couldn't see it at all. So this is take 2 for this video. We are doing lesson 9.7, comparing decimals, and that's page 533 in your book. So go ahead and turn to 533 and let's get started. Okay, so the essential question today is how can you compare decimals? And we're going to use the signs less than, greater than, or equal to. So on the less than sign, remember if your first number is smaller, then you use less than. And if your first number is bigger, you use the greater than symbol. And then, of course, if they're equal, you use the equal to symbol. So we have a city park. It says, the city park covers 64 square miles, about 1,800, the city park covers 6,400 square miles. About 1,800 of the park is covered by water, and about 2/10 of the park is covered by paved walkways. Is more of the park covered by paved or water or paved walkways? So they first want us to cross out the unnecessary information. The unnecessary information in this problem is how big the park is, because what they want us to do is compare if more of the park is covered by water or paved walkways. It doesn't matter how big the park is. So we're going to start by crossing out the city park is 6,400 of a square mile. So it says circle the numbers we will use, and that is 1,800 and 2/10. And then it says, what do you need to find? And what we need to find is whether more of the park is covered by water or walkways. So we'll write down here is more of the park covered by water or walkways. Okay, so now we've got one way to do that is to use a model, and we've got 1,800 and 2/10. So remember, when you're talking about hundredths, so it says 1,800, and that is the same thing as 1,800, or we can use the word for the fraction line out of. So we're going to start by shading 18 out of 100 of these sections. Now I know 18 is 1 whole tenth and then 8 ones. So I'm going to shade here 1 of these tenths, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I look and see, so that's how much is shaded for 1,800. So then we go over to the tenth size parts, and we're supposed to shade 2 of those. So 2/10 here, what I'm going to shade. The tip of my stylus is about to fall off, so it's not working real well. Okay, so if you look and see which one has more shaded, it's the 2/10. So that means that 18/100 is less than 2/10, because remember, you want to open the mouth towards the bigger number. All right. Other ways that you can do that is to find, locate 18/100 and 2/10 on a number line. And 2/10, so we don't have this number line is broken into hundredths, and it goes up to 50 hundredths. But if you remember, 2/10 is equivalent to 20 hundredths, because remember, if we have 2/10 and we need to turn that into hundredths, all we do is add a 0, so behind the top and bottom number. Well, it's the same with the decimal. If you have 2/10 to turn that into hundredths, you just put a 0 behind it. So 2/10 or 20 hundredths would be right here, and then 18/100 would be right here. Since 18/100 is closer to 0, so we're going to fill that in. 18/100 is closer to 0. That means that 18/100 is less than 2/10. So that's another way you can do it with a number line. And remember, the number that's closer to 0 is smaller. Just like on whole numbers, 1 is closer to 0 than, say, 5. So 1 is less than 5. And then it says we can compare equal size parts. So you ask yourself, 18 or 0.18 is the same as 18 hundredths. And 2/10, which is 2/10, is equivalent to 20 hundredths. Since 18/100 is less than 20, or 18/100 is less than 20 hundredths, so 18/100 is less than 2/10. So more of the park, if we go back up to the top and see, it was 18/100 is covered by water. So that means more of the park is covered by walkways, by paved walkways. Okay. You can also compare numbers written in as decimals by using place value. This is the way that I prefer to do it. Okay, so let me give you a whole number example. If you were comparing, so let's do a place value chart. So 1s, 10s, 100s. So this is whole numbers. And if you were comparing 542 with 396, okay? In order to figure out which number is bigger, you start with the biggest place value. You don't look over here to the ones place to see which number is bigger. You start with your biggest place value, which in this case is hundreds. And you know that 300s is less than 500s, so 542 would be bigger than 396. You can do the same thing with decimals. So we'll go through this and I'll show you more in a minute. Okay, so Tim has 5/10 of a dollar, and Sienna has 5/100 of a dollar. Who has more money? Now remember, a 10th looks like this, and a 100th looks like this. So Tim has 5 of these, and Sienna has 5 of these. Well, it's easy to see that Tim has more. So we'll fill in, poor Sienna, we'll fill in the model here. So Tim has, let me make this bigger so it can go faster. Tim has 5 hundredths, or excuse me, 5 tenths. And I'm going to make it even bigger. Look at that. That's going much faster. Okay, so there's Tim's amount of money. And then Sienna has 5 hundredths. So she has 5 of these guys. So it's clear to see that Tim has more money. Okay, and then right here, right now, what we're going to do right here, this is the way that I prefer to compare decimals. Okay, so Tim again has 5 tenths. So that means he has no whole dollars, so it would be a 0 in the ones place, and then your decimal, and then a 5 in the tenths place. Sienna has 0 whole dollars, 0 tenths, and 5 hundredths. So now we start using the place value. We start with the ones place. They both have 0 whole dollars, so we move on to the tenths place. And Tim has 5 tenths, Sienna has 0 tenths, so that automatically means that Tim has more. 5 tenths is greater than 0 tenths, so 5 tenths is greater than 5 hundredths. And then they want us to fill this out, and it says compare the size of 1 tenth and 1/100th. How could knowing this help you compare 5 tenths and 5 hundredths? Okay, so here's what we're going to write down. 1 tenth, whoops, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, 1 tenth of a whole is larger than 1/100th of a whole. So 5 tenths of a whole So 5 tenths of a whole is larger So 5 tenths of a whole is larger than 1 tenth of a whole. Trying to figure out, in my book it says 5 tenths of a whole are larger, not is larger. Really should be are there because we're talking about multiple. Okay, so 5 tenths of a whole are larger than 1 tenth of a whole. Sounds kind of weird, I know. Okay. Guys get that? Okay. All right, now they want us to compare 1 3/10 with 6/10. So we're going to start with shading our model. And let's see here, I'm going to try something a little different on shading this one. So I'm going to shade 1 whole and then 3/10. Oh, look at that, that's perfect size. Okay. 1 3/10, and then over here I'm going to shade 6/10. Okay. So So 1 3/10. So we shaded 1 hole and 3/10. And then over here, 0 holes, so we didn't shade the whole thing, and 6/10 size parts. So we can easily see that 1 3/10, whoops, that won't work, is greater than 6/10. Okay. They want us to now compare 39 hundredths and 42 hundredths using less than, greater than, or equal to. Shade the model to help. So let's do, we're going to do 39. So 3 holes and then 9 on the 4th one. Okay, so there's 39 shaded, and then 42, so there's 40, and then 2 more. So you can see that on the 42 hundredths I shaded more than on the 39 hundredths. So 39 hundredths is less than 42 hundredths. Okay. Now these are what I like to do. Okay, so we're going to fill in our place value chart 26 hundredths and 23 hundredths. So 0.26, 0.23, and then we go down the line. Ones place, they're the same. Tenths place, they're the same. But in hundredths, we've got a 6 and a 3. 6 is greater than 3, so that means 26 hundredths is greater than 23 hundredths. Okay, over here we have 7 tenths and 54 hundredths. We start with the ones place, they're the same. The tenths place, we've got a 7 and a 5. 7 is greater than 5, so 7 tenths is greater than 54 hundredths. A lot of times kids in the past have looked at this and said, okay, so this has 2 numbers in it, but this has 3 numbers in it, so they think that 54 hundredths would be greater than 7 tenths. But if you add your 0 to make this hundredths, it is 70 hundredths, and that's greater than 54 hundredths. Okay? Next one says 1 and 15 hundredths and 1 and 3/10. So going down the line here, ones place are the same. Tenths, we have a 1 and a 3, and 3 is greater than 1. So 1 and 1.15 or 1 and 15 hundredths is less than 1 and 3/10. And then we have a 4.5 and a 2.89. Right off the bat, we can see that one has 4 ones and the other has 2 ones. So 4 ones is greater than 2 ones. Okay, this is the part that you normally do on your own. So if you want to pause the video now, then you can come back in a minute and see if you got your answers right. Okay, so we think, look at the ones place first. We have a 0 and a 0, and then the tenths place, a 9 and an 8. 9 is greater than 8, so 9 tenths is greater than 81 hundredths. On number 7, we have a 1 in the ones place and a 0 in the ones place. 1 is greater than 0, so 1 and 6 hundredths is greater than 6 tenths. Okay, in the ones place we have a 0 and a 0. The tenths place we have a 2 and a 3. 3 is more than 2, so 25 hundredths is less than 3 tenths. And then we've got in the ones place a 2 and a 3. 3 is bigger than 2, so 2 and 61 hundredths is less than 3 and 29 hundredths. Okay, on these next next ones, we've got them in two different forms. One we've got a fraction, the other we've got a decimal. So, but we know that we can write fractions in decimal equivalents. So let's say we've got 30 hundredths and 3 tenths. Okay, so let's turn this 30 hundredths into 30 hundredths, the fraction form. Now, 30 hundredths or 3 tenths, which is bigger? Well, we can make tenths into hundredths by adding a 0 on bottom and the top. So what symbol we really need for that one is equal to. Okay, so our first equal to today. So because 30 hundredths is the same as 30 over 100 and 30 over 100. Okay, next we have 4 hundredths and 2 tenths. So we have 4 of these and 2 of these. 4 hundredths, to write that in decimal form, you would write it, as 0.04. And they've both got zeros in the ones place, and then we've got a 2 in the tenths place and a 0 in the tenths place. 2 is greater than 0, so that means 4 hundredths is less than 2 tenths. Okay, 1 tenth can be written as 0.1, but and then we can start comparing. A 0 in the ones place, a 0 in the ones place, a 1 in the tenths place, and a 1 in the tenths place. Now we've got a 5, but over here next to the 1 it's kind of like a 0. So we can plug our 0 in there, and now we've got a 5 in the hundredths place and a 0 in the hundredths place. Well, 5 is greater than 0, so 15 hundredths is greater than 1 tenth. And then this one's a little trickier because they've got a 1/8. Well, we've only been dealing with denominators of 10 or 100. So I got out my fraction tools here, and the 1/8 is like this, okay, 1/8 size part. The other, the decimal that they gave us is 8 tenths, which is the same as 8 tenth size parts. So, which is bigger, 1/8 size part or 8 tenth size parts? Well, it's pretty clearly 8 tenth size parts. So we're going to use the less than symbol, and we're going to write this as 8 tenths. Okay, here's our last question. So we've got Robert and Matt and Ivan, and they've all got some money, and they're trying to figure out who has more money. So Robert has $14.53 in his pocket. Matt has, nope, we're going to do Matt next. Matt has $14.40 in his pocket, and then Ivan has $14.25 in his pocket. Okay, it wants to know who had more money, Robert or Matt. So we've got Robert and Matt. So both of them have a 1 in the tens place. Both have a 4 in the tens place. Robert has a 5 in the tenths place, and Matt has a 4. So that means Robert has more money than Matt. And then it wants to know, did Ivan have more money than either Robert or Matt? So all three boys have a 1 in the tens place, a 4 in the ones place, and then the tenths place is what's different. So Robert has a 5, Matt has a 4, Ivan has a 2. Is 2, Ivan's amount, greater than the 4 or the 5? And it is not. So the way we're going to record that answer because it wants to know who had more money, Robert or Matt. Robert has more money than Matt. And then it wants to know, did Ivan have more money than Robert or Matt? And no, Ivan has less money than both Robert and Matt. Okay, that's it. Your assignment today is 537, 537. Remember, this symbol is less than. If your beginning number is smaller than your second number, you use the less than symbol. This is greater than when your first number is bigger than your second, and then of course equal to. And you want the mouth to open towards the bigger number, okay? If you get confused, go back and look at the examples that we did today. One last thing, I want to ask you guys a big favor. So when you turn in your packet on May 1st, the packet that you're doing right now is due May 1st. That's the same day that you're going to come up to school and get your supplies. I have got them all ready to go in bags for you with your name on it. And we're going to probably have tables set up outside where you can pick up your stuff. We'll have it all bagged up and ready for you, unless it's raining, and then we'll probably have them in the gym. But Miss Webb and Miss Cunningham and I have all gotten all your stuff together. I got your stuff that was in Miss Cunningham's class and got everything together, including your, I think a few of you ordered Drama Club DVDs. We've got your pictures and your picture order forms. If you didn't get pictures, we've got your picture proofs, your lanyards, all your markers and stuff. One thing I'm going to ask you, a big favor. When you bring your work back, your work packet, if you could please put the work in stacks based on subject. So put all the math stuff together, all the ELA stuff together, and all the science and social studies together. That way, Miss Webb, Miss Cunningham, and I can just say, here's all the math stuff, here's all the science and social studies, here's all the ELA, and take home the stuff that we need to grade really easily. That would be a big, big help. So if you have any questions, as always, let me know. Miss Webb, Miss Cunningham, and I are always available Monday through Friday from noon to 1. For sure, you can call, text, email, seesaw message, any of that stuff during that time, and we'll get right back to you. But any other time you have trouble, just let me know, and I'm glad to help you. I love you. Mwah. Miss you guys.